Good evening from Columbia, South Carolina, folks. I'm Parker Thune. That's Jesse Critton, and this is Williams-Brice Stadium. And boy, was that a dominant victory today for the Oklahoma Sooners, who came here ranked 14th in the country, took a slide last week after an emotional and frankly embarrassing 23-6 loss against Texas in the Red River Shootout. The question all week was, how would this team answer? And they answered with some emphasis, Jesse Critton. No question about it. This team came out, and from the jump, they were ready. They took it to the Gamecocks on both sides of the ball. And ultimately, there never really was a doubt throughout this game that the Sooners had it well in hand. There was maybe a moment late in the first half where the cynical Sooner fan was maybe squirming a little bit, but for the most part, this team just handled business for 60 straight minutes of football.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned maybe that moment where you get a little squirmish right before halftime because Oklahoma had dominated the first half, but because of some self-inflicted mistakes, South Carolina is able to score right before halftime. It's 14-7. You're thinking this is kind of a similar situation to what Oklahoma was in last week, where they had mostly outplayed Texas, but didn't go into halftime with a huge lead, then collapsed in the second half. That's not what happened here today, Parker. OU came out in the second half, really laid it on them on both sides of the ball. So I think today was not only an important bounce back win as a whole, but you saw that moment at halftime where you could see the correlation to last week and this week. This time they were able to come out of the halftime, play well, win. It was just an important moment of growth for this team.
It started with the run game for Oklahoma today, Jesse. Ben Arbuckle evidently heard the noise after the Sooners managed just 40 ground yards last week against the Longhorns. And what was interesting was we didn't see a lot of John Mateer in the run game. That's been Oklahoma's bread and butter throughout the season. When they try to establish the run, more often than not, it's been Mateer finding success on the ground. But Torrey Blaylock went for 101 yards and a touchdown today on 19 carries. Xavier Robinson chipped in 11 carries, 58 yards, and a touchdown of his own. The Sooners made it a point to get their backs in a groove. And I think what became clear today is that you have your 1-2 punch in the backfield the rest of the way. It's Torrey Blaylock and it's Xavier Robinson.
Yeah, there was a mandate, I think, today to run the ball effectively. We saw them do that on the opening drive of the game. They score a touchdown to open the game. They had 5 carries for 50 yards on that drive. Torrey Blaylock had 45 on his own. And you go into halftime, they were averaging over 7 yards a carry going into halftime, 136 rushing yards. It was so interesting to see this offense not so reliant on John Mateer. John Mateer didn't have to throw the ball a lot today because the running game was so good. And Parker, to your point, I think today was not only important to see this team run the ball so effectively. I mean, South Carolina, they're going to play better defenses in South Carolina, but today we actually saw them run the ball well. And I think in the process, we saw them clean up the rotation. Torrey Blaylock, clearly the number 1 guy. Xavier Robinson, really effective as a change of pace number 2 guy. Those were the only 2 guys involved. I think it's clear not only they ran the ball, but I think they figured out some things about the rotation.
John Mateer, very pedestrian day through the air. That's really all that was required, 150 yards, 1 touchdown. No turnovers for this Oklahoma offense, so they get away from that quite discouraging trend from the early stages of the season. I suppose the first half. This is the first game of the second half of the season for Oklahoma. Now, defensively, if we kind of turn the page here, as a whole, this unit played very well, and we'll dig into that in just a bit. But first and foremost, it's time to have a conversation about Taylor Wine. Taylor Wine might be Oklahoma's best defensive player right now. I mean, there's no way to downplay, there's no way to diminish, there's no way to minimize what Taylor Wine is doing for this team on a week in, week out basis. And he played his best game as a Sooner today.
He did 4 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, tied with Kendall Daniels for the team lead in tackles for loss. And it started from the beginning with him, too. I mean, think about South Carolina's driving on their first drive of the game. They're looking like they're going to tie this thing up at 7-7. They get inside the 5, but Kendall Daniels, huge stop on 3rd and goal. South Carolina goes for it. Taylor Wine stops Lenora Sellers from scoring on that 4th and goal. It's a turnover on downs, massive play. Then obviously Taylor Wine comes up with the special teams interception on the fake punt from South Carolina, which was kind of an interesting decision, almost a predictable one, but Brent Venables talked about it after the game. They were emphasizing all week to be ready for those special teams kind of plays from South Carolina. Taylor Wine was there. It was fundamental. It was sound. And Parker, I think the best thing is you could have argued through the first 3 or 4 weeks that it was Jaden Jackson. Maybe it was David Stone as this team's best defensive player. The last couple of weeks, I mean, Taylor Wine was maybe this team's best defensive player against Texas, and I think he was today. It's just a big development.
He was all over that fake punt that South Carolina tried to run. I mean, all over it. there was never a prayer that that play was working because Taylor Wines snuffed it out from the jump and recorded his first career interception, which as a defensive end, that might be his only career interception. He'll always have that moment, though, here in Columbia, South Carolina. All in all, though, man, this Oklahoma front was fantastic, as they typically are. And the guys at the second level swarmed to the ball all day. LaNorris Sellers, to his credit, he was able to make a few things happen in the scramble game, but South Carolina moved the ball very effectively on their opening possession in the first quarter, and then that was it. Their lone scoring drive in the second quarter mostly consisted of penalties moving them down the field. So they found no success. They found no rhythm against this Oklahoma defense. And week after week, it feels like we're having a similar conversation, Jesse, about this unit. They're one of the best in the country, and they continue to prove it every single time out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, today was a day. I mean, South Carolina's offensive line is banged up. This should be a game where Oklahoma's defensive line comes out and feasts, and they did. I mean, not only 6 sacks came from all over the defensive line, but Parker LaNorris Sellers finished with negative rushing yards. And when you put into account just how much of a dual threat guy he is, how big of a guy he is, how tough he is to bring down, Oklahoma did a really good job after that first drive of not letting South Carolina get anything in the running game. 54 rushing yards on the day for South Carolina. So when OU snuffed that out, they were able to then kind of hone their focus on LaNorris Sellers, not letting him get outside the pocket. What did we see this Oklahoma defense? If they struggled with anything last week against Texas, it was Arch Manning getting outside the pocket. That was a similar threat with LaNorris Sellers today. They never let him do that. They kept him contained, kept him from making plays. And yeah, when this defensive line is playing like this, and when the offense is playing efficient, mistake-free football, you see the results. That's what happens when Oklahoma does that.
Tate Sandell was called upon to kick another 55-yard field goal, and he converted. The Sooners have themselves a kicker. That much is clear. Grayson Miller struggled a little bit in the punting department, but was able to overcome, for the most part, was able to work past an early miscue in which he just mishit the ball, wound up in an 18-yard punt. John Mateer had a pooch punt that Elijah Thomas downed at the 1-yard line. So felt like everything, for the most part, was working today for Oklahoma. And it feels like they got a little bit of their mojo back as they get ready to return home next week and take on Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, look, getting any win in the SEC is difficult, and South Carolina is not the toughest team that they'll face, right? But coming out on the road, doing it, coming off a game where you were just embarrassed in the second half by Texas, and all the noise, you start to wonder, has this team really learned from last year? Is the second half of this year, is it going to be a disaster? Is it going to be similar moments where this team can't get out of its own way, or they play down to the competition? Coming into this game, we knew Oklahoma was the better team. They were favored to win today, but it was still going to be hard to win on the road. And Parker, to do it like that, to win by 19 in a game where you were thoroughly the better team, with what's coming up ahead on this schedule, Oklahoma needed this win for a bunch of different reasons. And today was, Parker, I don't know about you, but this was one of the most impressive wins of the Brent Venables era to me today, just because this was a team that was the better team and they came out and played like it.
And they needed an answer after the Texas loss. They needed to prove that they had emotionally and mentally turned the page from a performance that they just flat out needed to flush from a week ago. And they did that, and they did it in quite emphatic fashion today. On the road, an eye for an eye, Jesse. The Gamecocks came to Norman last year and pounded Oklahoma. The Sooners returned the favor in the Gamecocks' own building this year. So it's a rooster kickoff next week. Oklahoma and Ole Miss, 11 a.m. from Norman, America. The Sooners will be looking to continue to reassert themselves. Feel like a lot of the vibes were negative coming out of the Texas game. But again, all their goals are still out in front of them as a football team. They can continue to reassert themselves as a legit SEC championship contender with another win over Ole Miss next week. A team that has played good ball, a team that has been consistent this year under the leadership of Lane Kiffin and under the direction of quarterback Trinidad Chambliss. So we are eager to cover that one and to discuss it from every angle leading up to the contest. And we will certainly do that on OUinsider.com, to which you should subscribe, no doubt about it, for just $1 for your first week. Give it a try. If you don't like it, you don't have to stick around. We think you'll like it, though. We're going to go back to our hotel, for one thing, probably get some Bojangles along the way. We're going to record an Under the Visor postgame podcast where we will dig into this game in particular on every single level, from every single facet. We'll discuss it all. We'll break it all down for you guys, as we always do after every single one of Oklahoma's football games, home and away. But for now, from Columbia, South Carolina, for Jesse Crittenden, I am Parker Thune, signing off. The Sooners beat the Cox 26-7. Take it easy, everybody.